Hi friends, today I'm going to make an important video about the questions which are typically asked when you apply for a company job or an industry job. And this video is going to be useful for people whether you have done a BS degree, an MS degree or a PhD degree or even a postdoc. Now, as most of you know, there are very limited number of jobs out there in academia and research labs, so it's possible that many of you will be applying for industry jobs even if you have PhD degrees. So let's begin. Now, the number one question which people are going to ask you is, tell me about yourself. And essentially this question is like an icebreaker. It provides you the opportunity to showcase yourself to the company or to the person interviewing you. And here the main fact you have to remember is that there are different versions of self. There is the true self, there is the best self, and there is the professional self. So as a general person, you may have a lot of things which you do beside your work. Maybe you are into scuba diving, into rock music, into playing games such as cricket or football, but the interviewer does not necessarily want to know about these things unless you are interviewing for a position which requires any of these things. So in most cases you are going to only talk about your professional self, and this is something which aligns with the ad which has come out for the position. So it's very important to make sure that you prepare for the interview and you mention the version of yourself which is most suitable for the interview concerned. For example, if the interview is about a programming position in domains such as mathematics or STEM, then you should focus that you are somebody who is a scientist, you are somebody who is a computer scientist, an engineer, a stats graduate, a mathematician, and that you have expertise in programming. That is essentially yourself. If there is something which you do which is relevant to the job, for example, you play some game which could be useful, for example a computer game, or you take part in some debates and some competitions in mathematics, then you can mention these also, but keep these to a minimum because like I mentioned here, they are looking for your professional self, not for your true self. Now there is also something known as a best self and a true self, and the best self is the person you want to be. So never mention any weaknesses on your part, that maybe you are somebody who procrastinates, who delays things every now and then, and so on. You do not need to bring out these issues. When you are planning to apply to a company, you are at your best self, so you do not procrastinate and you do not come late to meetings and so on. So that is the best self, and you need to try to become this version of the best self which you are projecting forward. So the number two question is, why do you want to work with us? And this is where the interviewer makes the transition from you to the company. So in the first question you have answered about yourself, and now what you need to do is you need to give a brief outline about the company, maybe in one or two sentences, and then say why your strengths and why your personal self or professional self fits in with the company. So for example, if you were applying for a job in YouTube, which is a branch of Google, then you may know that some of the important problems they have are related to search, it's related to the recommendation system, and also it's related to things like data compression, keeping all these videos in some servers with minimum cost, with minimum usage of energy, and so on. So again, then you need to do some research on the company so that you can answer this question, why you want to work with us. And once again, some of the things to mention here are your growth trajectories in terms of career and how they will benefit by working with the company. So for example, if you are somebody who did his master's degree on recommendation systems using machine learning, then it very well ties in with the things which Google or YouTube would want for that job. Now the number three question is, what are your strengths? And this question lets you highlight some of the things which you bring to the table. Now your strengths could be things such as intelligence, teamwork, problem solving, knowledge, and so on. Your strength could be you know how to do research from a topic because you have done a PhD, and you essentially start with a literature survey and quickly zoom down into the important things in the problem and then address that problem. So very often problem solving is one of the biggest strengths of many people with advanced degrees. Now keep in mind that they would like to know things which you have demonstrated expertise for. That's a very important term, demonstrated expertise. So essentially, if there is any strength which is part of your curriculum, that's going to be very useful. For example, if you have done a master's degree project on deep learning using Python, then of course deep learning is one of your biggest strengths. Simultaneously, mathematical modeling and programming is also going to be your strength, and so on. So do remember that whenever you are doing a degree, keep in mind the expertise you are building up through the degree, the demonstrated expertise you are building up, because that's something which they are going to look for. Now the number 4 question is, what are your weaknesses? And this is kind of a curveball, a googly. It's a difficult question to answer, especially for the people who have advanced degrees and STEM discipline people, because they are loath to admit that they have any weakness. Now some people like to give some replies such as, I tend to work very hard, or I sometimes work in the weekend and that's not a good thing, I want to cut down on that. And these may be okay in some situations, but these do come out as somewhat corny and casual to the interviewer concerned. Now what they want to actually know is that the degree of self-awareness you have as a person. So essentially most people are very cognizant of their strength, they are very proud of their strengths, but they do not want to know their weaknesses also, so that's not a good sign. So maybe you are somebody who is a very hands-on scientific person, you are a person who essentially does all the mathematical modeling, the programming, the experiments himself. And so one of the weaknesses which could be there for future is that you need to figure out how to develop leadership skills, how to delegate, and so on. So you can mention some of these things, especially if you are applying for an individual contributor role, because this will certainly please the person. They can put you in leadership roles later on, but right now they will say that currently the role is an individual contributor role, so you will not have any direct reports, but it's good that you are planning in that direction. They want to see that you have plans down the road to move into the management side of the equation. Now never give weaknesses which are directly related to your job. So for example, if your job involves computer programming, do not say things like you don't like to code. And if your job involves management of a team, do not say that you don't like dealing with people. So that's something very obvious, but it's something important to keep in mind, because again, remember, you do not want to show your true self unless you want to not get the job actually. And in that case, I would say that it's better idea not to apply for the job in the first place. Now one more possible answer could be that if there is a job which only involves, let us say, Java, and you know Java very well, but you can mention that you know Java very well, but you do not know Python, and you would like to learn that also down the road. So that's something which will give the interviewer the idea that you are somebody who is not willing to just rest on his laurels. He wants to also improve his repertoire of skills with other languages which can be useful to the team in future. The number 5th question is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And this question is asked to check out whether you have some plan for your growth, and also implicitly to check out whether you actually are planning to stay in the company, or your plan is just to get a job and exit the company in a year or two for a higher paying job. So in this kind of situation, you should do some research on the company and have a clear growth path. For example, if you are interviewing in companies such as Boeing or a car company or ISRO, you can say that you want to be part of a good engineering design mission. You want to learn about system engineering. For example, if you are working in aircraft design, you want to learn the entire process of aircraft design, and you want to become a chief designer at the end of 5 to 10 years. And these are some things which are always good to have. Some level of ambition ensures that the interviewer and the manager is sure that you are going to work hard to go to the next position. They don't want to see a person who is only going to work in the current position, then move laterally to another position, then move laterally to another position, and so on, because in the first year or so of the company you don't do much work, and so your productivity or usefulness to the company becomes more as the years go by. So that's something to keep in mind. Now here I would say some inappropriate answers would be that I would be your boss in 5 years, or I would be the CEO of the company in 5 years, and so on. So these are not appropriate things to say. Certainly the one with the being boss in 5 years and so on. Of course, if you are applying for a position of vice president of the company, you can aspire to be CEO in 5 years, that's okay. But again, you do not want to say this if you are interviewing with the CEO himself or herself. So keep these human relations issues in mind. Now the number 6th question is, are you a team player? And this is of course a very relevant question which will come to you, especially if you are somebody who has done a PhD degree and has done a postdoc degree, because in that case people implicitly assume that you are not a team player, that you are a lone ranger researcher. So again, here you should of course answer yes if you want the job, and also you should lay out various projects you have done, various things you have done where you have worked with teams of people. So very often if you go back in your history and see, you will find that you have done some final year or capstone design project with several people. So that's an example of teamwork. You may have written papers with some people, maybe with your PhD supervisor and with some master's degree or bachelor's degree student. That's an example of teamwork. And maybe you have guided interns when you were a grad student or you were a bachelor's degree student. So all these count as teamwork and leadership. And also remember that while you are at the university, make sure that you always put up your hand when any of these positions are out there. So if your supervisor tells you, do you want to guide an intern, do not immediately say no to these things, because then what happens is you do not build demonstrated expertise for any of these possibilities. You need to show demonstrated expertise, and so it's good to keep these things in mind when you are a student in college itself, so you do not turn down things. There may be some position to be head of the dorm or the hostel complex you are in, to take part in some mathematical competitions, some computer olympiads, and so on. So make sure you do all these things. Finally, I would say the number 7 and the last question is, why should we hire you? And this question again comes back to the job ad itself and what are your strengths respect to the job ad. So keep the job ad in the front of your mind. If the job ad said that they want somebody who knows mathematical optimization, programming in Python, and also somebody who knows Monte Carlo simulations, non-deterministic analysis, then you should point out that you have these strengths. The job ad exactly calls out for these strengths, and so there is a one-to-one match type of situation here. This is especially good if you are a master's or a PhD student, because in that case what may happen is that your master's or PhD thesis may actually sync with the job position very closely, and in that case you are very likely to get the job. So for example, if you did your master's thesis in machine learning and most people use Python, but maybe you are using C++, and there is a job which essentially wants to use machine learning and they call for C++, then of course you are a very good fit for that job. So this is one of the reasons why you should not always be obsessed with only going with the computer language or with the thing which is the most popular at the present time, because do remember that many people are also studying that thing, and so there are always a lot of jobs for something which all the people are not studying. So for example, if you have a PhD in virology or bioinformatics or blockchain or cryptocurrency or any of these disciplines, maybe development and design of drones, then you should look for jobs which are exactly matching with your thesis and with your basic area of expertise and you can apply to them. Start looking for jobs much before you graduate, because then you will clearly know what are the skills which are required for the job, because very often jobs do not only require the fundamental skills, for example knowledge of a certain discipline such as fluid mechanics or statistics, but they also often require the knowledge of a tool. For example, if you are somebody in statistics, you are expected to know the language R. If you are somebody in machine learning, you are expected to know Python or TensorFlow or scikit-learn or PyTorch or any of these fields. You should be able to figure out how to do things in Google Colab. What is the difference between GPU and CPU? When do you want to run things on GPU, and so on. So all these extraneous information is often very useful in a company interview, but it may not be something which is very important as far as professor is concerned, because your professor is probably only interested in writing papers. So that was my take for today about the 7 top interview questions, and if you have any experience about any other questions which have been asked to you in an interview, please mention that in the comment section below, and I will see you in a video sometime soon. See you then.